In today's discussion, Northeast India's integration with Southeast Asia and Japan, balancing economic ties and ecological conservation, we shall delve deep into the specific factors which shape the dynamic partnership between Northeast India and Southeast Asia, and also Japan. I would request Dr. Jaishankar sir to illuminate us on the same.
Apart from his successful diplomatic career, Dr. Jaishankar sir is a prolific writer. His recent release, Why Bharat Matters, offers a nuanced perspective highlighting India's significance not merely as a nation but also as a beacon of power and resilience. I would request Dr. Jaishankar sir to talk about his book as well. Sir, I request you to please come here and share with us your knowledge and expertise on the topic mentioned.
Namaskar and a very good morning to all of you. I'm really very pleased today to be in Kivarimal College and to participate in this event about Northeast India, Southeast Asia and Japan. As you know or may not know, I have myself spent a part of my career in Southeast Asia. So I speak, and in Japan, so I speak with the perspectives of living there or working on those relationships, as well as I have some home insights which I'm sure would be valuable to figure out how we bond even more closely. But I was very pleased when I saw the topic because it resonated with something which I have been trying to propagate as foreign minister. And that is that in a globalized world, foreign policy matters to everyone. That what happens out there is no longer limited to out there. And it is not only a subject which people like me need to worry about. That in different ways it is something which affects the life of an ordinary person, sometimes without your even knowing it. And there are so many examples of that. If one looks back at the last few years, even the COVID pandemic is an example of how something which happened, which started somewhere else in the world, actually ended up frankly taking over our lives for more than 2.5 years. And in every day something happens somewhere. It can be something very dramatic, students or tourists who have gone abroad and find themselves in a conflict zone. That's happened in Ukraine, people who went to work, it happened to them in Sudan, it happened to people who were researchers in Israel. But it could be the quality of your life. Foreign policy, for example, makes sure that your petrol prices are kept lower. It ensures that the Apple phone, which many of you are probably holding in your hand or keeping in your pocket, is made in India. There are, depending on what you do in life, somewhere or the other, some part of what is happening in the world impinges on us, and therefore I was very encouraged to see that awareness when the topic was, how does Northeast India really interact much more closely with Southeast Asia, which is a proximate region, and with Japan. That same awareness seemed to be there, and is something which I very much welcome. Now, in looking at the subject, I actually want you to reflect a little bit on history, because we naturally assume that the situation that we are in, that's like a starting point. We don't think too much, how did we land up in that situation in the first place? Why are the challenges of the day the challenges? And I want you to think back actually about the consequences of the partition. Now you would ask me saying, okay, what's the connection here? You know, we're talking Northeast India and areas east of India. And the answer is that actually the partition of India in many ways broke or undermined a lot of the natural connectivity that the northeast of India had enjoyed and would have enjoyed otherwise. And as a result of that, actually, if you look at the early years, the first few decades of after our partition, after we got independence, the levels of growth that the northeast India should have seen, we actually saw that stunted. We saw that stunted because they did not enjoy all the advantages which many other parts of India had, simply because, as I said, there were political barriers, there were administrative issues, and therefore, in a way, what we are seeing now is something which, quite honestly, should have come much earlier if history had been kinder to us. So when I look in terms of what has changed, to me, of course, step one, we speak about look east. I always tell people for India to look east, Delhi should first look east. Delhi should look east and see the northeast. And it is when the potential and the possibilities of the northeast are fully appreciated. That is actually when the look east and the act east policies become serious. The second, as I said, is to mitigate the challenges which came out of the partition. And there, what had happened, fortunately, was that East Pakistan became Bangladesh. Then there was a difficult period even with Bangladesh. But if you look at the last decade, Northeast India has actually been a big beneficiary of this dramatic improvement in India-Bangladesh ties. That when we did the land boundary agreement in 2015, once things settled down, there was a new level of trust and confidence between India and Bangladesh. You saw a lot of other problems being resolved, particularly problems dealing with terrorism, problems dealing with instability. Because at the end of the day, until there is stability, there is law and order, there is good governance, then other benefits of development and prosperity do not happen. So what we have actually seen since 2015 has been initially a rebuilding of what you can say was the pre-65, because what happened in the 1965 was, in the 65 war, East Pakistan cut off all the connections which was then with the rest of India. So the rail links, the road links. So the initial challenge was, okay, get that back. So what we have seen really with Bangladesh is road connectivity, rail connectivity, the fact that today trains, buses take, move from this side to that side, the use of their ports, because those ports like Mongla or Chittagong, they would have been actually the natural ports for the Northeast, if you look at it geographically. But those ports, for political reasons, could not be accessed by us. Today, when we look at the possibilities which have opened up for the Northeast, actually, the enormous improvement in India-Bangladesh relations has actually opened up many more opportunities there. The second natural, I would say, opening for us is, of course, Myanmar. Now, in the case of Myanmar, we have done our best, and again, there are projects there which could be game-changing. Probably the most important one among them is what is called the India-Myanmar-Thailand Trilateral Highway. If the trilateral, or I would say when the trilateral highway is built, because parts of it have been built, there are gaps which are missing today. when the trilateral highway is complete, actually there is for the first time the possibility of smooth logistics movement all the way from, I would say, India till actually the Vietnam coast, because on that side the roads are growing, the connectivity is happening. So if we can somehow get through the Myanmar challenge, the possibility actually of a connectivity corridor which will run down the the lateral of Southeast Asia, coming all the way actually into the Indian heartland, that is something which would happen. Myanmar, as I said, has been a great challenge till there was a restoration of democracy. We had one set of problems. Last few years, after the military has taken over, there's been, in fact, a new set of problems, in many ways more serious. And obviously, today for us, while we are also mitigating its consequences on our own border, there is the larger stakes that we have about connectivity through Myanmar. If all of this works, think about it. Once the northeast gets connectivity eastwards through Myanmar, southwards into Bangladesh, the entire eastern India, including the eastern seaboard of India, is developed more intensively, which is definitely the objective of the Modi government. There is actually, we are looking at the possibility today. I mean, on the horizon, there is a completely new promise of a much brighter economic future for Northeast Asia, for Northeast India. Now, the connection with Southeast Asia was one subject. The other one, of course, was the links with Japan. I think it was rightly mentioned that Japan has taken a special interest in Northeast India, and realizing that, in fact, in 2017, Prime Minister Modi asked us to set up a special forum with Japan. It's the only forum of the kind we have with any country. It is an India-Japan forum which is dedicated to developing India's northeast and developing the links of India's northeast with other international players. So basically means Bangladesh and Myanmar. This started in 2017. It's now 7 years. As Foreign Secretary, I chaired it myself. And if one looks at these last 7 years, some results of this are already evident. I think probably the biggest difference it has made is in national highway connectivity, that in partnership with Japan, actually there's been a significant enhancement of road building. I think those of you from the region would know this better. I'm told National Highway 54, 51, 40, 127B and 208 are examples really of work which has been done or work which is underway. But beyond physical connectivity, there are places, I mean Guwahati is one example where the water distribution in Guwahati, the sewage system, that is under modernization. There have been places where power stations have been upgraded. In Mizoram, there's a commitment to build a specialized cancer center, cancer treatment center for the northeast region, because that's a particular concern there. And in many of the northeastern states, actually the bamboo value chain is being improved. We also hope to see an expansion of Japanese language teaching in many of the educational institutions there. So these are actually developments on the ground that I'm talking to you about. So what beyond that, what is it, in what way can really the Northeast integrate or interact much more with the regions east of it? I would say probably today the strongest possibility is in mobility, in the movement of skills and talent, because in some cases in Southeast Asia, but definitely in Japan, there is actually an enormous shortage of skills and talent. So we have worked out with Japan an agreement in 14 different areas, where if people go through a basic language course and clear the minimum requirement for it, they then become eligible really for employment in Japan. Now, similar arrangements today, what we call mobility agreements, it already existed with Singapore, where language is not an issue. We are actually discussing one with Malaysia right now. Another country which is very keen to look at Indian talent is Korea, and much of it is in you can say more traditional areas of employment, but there is now something very different emerging in the global economy, which will be of great interest to all of us, and that is semiconductors. And it's of interest to us also because when we have, the Modi government has a semiconductor mission, and the first few agreements between companies for the semiconductor mission have already been signed, and work is actually happening today. Groundbreaking is happening. Facilities are coming up, and we were very gratified that one of them, a very important one, happens to be in Assam. That in Assam, for semiconductor technology, for assembly, testing, marking and packaging plant to come up, this is actually, when we say first Delhi should look east and act east and look at Northeast Asia, one thing is to pay lip service. The other is actually to let investments on the ground out there to see that there are actually employment opportunities locally of a high skill, of something which is at a global level, and something like semiconductors, which is seen very much as a sunrise industry. For that to come up in Assam, which has a larger repercussion for the entire Northeast India, is something which is very important. So when we look today at east of India, as I said, definitely Japan important, Southeast Asia important. Another player important is actually Taiwan. That with Taiwan is a partner in the first in this fab, in the foundry, semiconductor foundry, which we have agreed to. But again, with Taiwan, we have also done an agreement of mobility. Their parliament equivalent is now considering it right now. So here again are possibilities of workplace out there. Now, other than that, a second area of great interest is actually tourism. That there are, we are today a country with an enormous potential, which is still vastly unrealized. That if you just look at even a simple exercise like how many World Heritage sites there are in India, and then see how many tourists there are, you can see that there's a lot of ground that we need to make up. And part of the reason why we actually organized the G20 presidency for a full year across the entire country, because Mr. Modi's instructions were, he said, I don't want a single state left out. I don't want, this is probably the biggest thing that we have done in terms of getting the diplomatic attention of the world. But that diplomatic attention should not just be in Delhi and 3 or 4 other metropolitan cities. It should not even be in the normal tourist destination, okay, go to Agra, go to Jaipur, go to Bharat. It has to be in every state. And we ensured that it was in every state. And by doing it in every state, we actually, because if you look at the G20, roughly, I think about 100,000 foreigners came in some form or the other for the G20 meetings. Okay. And think of them actually as probably the most important influencers of the world. That if these people went to different states of India, and many of them, didn't even know the state existed, that for them to go there to see something very different, it, the common feedback I used to get is, we saw an India beyond the India that we knew. And that was actually what was our objective. So what we hope very much is in the coming years, all the effort that we put in through the G20, that was almost like the basic foundation. Today we do intend to have tourism promotion actually as a core economic activity. Because if you look today in the world, nothing employs people like tourism. The multipliers are just enormous. I mean, for every tourist who comes in, the number, if you look at the chain of employment consequences that it poses, it's actually something which can be game changing, and that is certainly something we intend to promote in the Northeast. The third, of course, is in a sense, the more orthodox areas of employment, and I would particularly single out health, hospitality, and aviation. And it's interesting, one, of course, not all countries in the world are doing well economically, but even among those who are, we are a little bit unusual today. We are one of the few countries where the planes are full, the airports are full, the hotels are full. That, when you have a 7% growth rate in the size of the population and the size of the economy that we have, the effect that it has on sectors, as I said, like hospitality, aviation, tourism, is enormous. And where health is concerned, it's also a reality. After COVID, all of us actually have become much more health focused. And on top of it, the government itself, through the Ayushman Bharat initiative, is trying to get everybody to understand that health is not a privilege, health is a right. That we have to create, if we are talking of a Viksit Bharat, the starting point is to make sure everybody has at least basic health access, affordable health access. And if there is affordable health access, just imagine what the consequences for the health industry is going to be. So I put it to you that these, there are the sunrise industries, there is the tourism potential, there are the more orthodox sectors, health, hospitality, aviation. And as I said, all of these are not just in the country. It is also actually part of being captured by the global workplace. So the picture that I present to you is a Northeast which is actually today getting the political and economic and development attention that it has long lacked. And with that attention and with those resources, with better governance, with greater political stability, and with connectivity to the world, and with the special, interest which countries like Japan or Southeast Asia would take, we are actually we are at the cusp of something really quite different. Now, this was the immediate topic which was given to me, but I can't resist the temptation of widening this a bit, because just as I spoke to you about the Northeast and the proximate areas and the areas with which there would be a stronger cultural historical connect, every part of India actually has some variant of it. That if you look at, say, peninsular India, they would also be looking at Southeast Asia, they would be looking at Indian Ocean states. Even, a state like Odisha Odisha has a Bali Yatra. They have a historical connect actually with parts of Indonesia. You go to Kerala, everybody will talk to you about the Gulf. Go to Gujarat, they will talk to you about East Africa. So the fact is, every part of India, in some way or the other, actually has some external connection. There is some special affinity there. And if we are smart, we need to maximize it. That in every relationship, we need to find, okay, which part of India, which face of India, which talent of India, where is the intuitive connect stronger. And if we do that, actually in an integrated, mapped out manner, I can tell you, my job in the foreign ministry will become much easier. That everywhere I would find some kind of connect between India and some part of the world around us. Now, how to maximize that bonding, of course, is a very important part of foreign policy. And where, in terms of definitely the Indo-Pacific, the region east of India today, or if you look towards the Gulf, you look towards Indian Ocean, we have to also make history work for us, because we have history. However, if you start traveling eastwards, even from Delhi, start going eastwards, you can see actually some Indian footprint, which actually goes all the way to the east coast of China, even up to Korea. I mean, there are, there is a, you can call it a legend or history, but there is certainly a belief in Korea that they have a connection with Ayodhya. If you go to the east coast of China, there are actually Shaivite temples, which there's a town there called Swanzhou, where even today there are Shaivite temples, because they were trading communities. In the middle of Vietnam, those of you who may be familiar with those Jaishankar Prasad stories of Champa Kingdom, that, we somewhere, maybe the colonial era, maybe our, I don't want to blame you, but education system, somewhere we actually have lost our own sense of history, and it is important today to recover that, to realize it, to appreciate it. Because once we get much more into our authentic history, rather than what we have inherited or shaped by others, I think many of these connects will naturally, there is such a deep connect between Northeast India and Southeast Asia. But it's not something which is necessarily taught to us in our school and college. And I can give you the same the other way. If you look towards west of India, if you look at the Gulf, you look at East Africa, these are regions where, for centuries, for millennia, actually in some form or the other, India and Indians have been active. So recapturing that sense of history is important. Then what happens is, if you really want to matter in the world, you have to find commonalities. I spoke about that. But you also have to be relevant today to what the world wants, and you have to earn the respect of the world. So when I was encouraged to make some remarks on my book, a large part of my case about why Bharat matters today, one part is this affinity that we have with the world. That with a very large part of the world, there is some connect, something in our history, something in our culture, something in our tradition that I can find a bonding to. If I am aware and I play it up and I, make them aware of it, I think for them Bharat will matter. Secondly, if I am more relevant to the world. Now, I can be relevant in different ways. I can be relevant economically. I was very relevant during COVID, because I was for 100 countries a provider of vaccines. So I am relevant today because in the Red Sea, with all this tension which is taking place between, people firing missiles and drones and piracy, 21 of our ships are actually on service out there who are actually protecting international shipping. So that's also a very graphic, and they actually keep trade costs down, because if you can protect shipping, insurance cost is less, shipping cost is less. So how do you get relevant? And of course, most important, how do you actually get the respect of the world? And you get the respect of the world just like you get the respect of people, which is you have to perform better. That any of us who, a student gets respect when in the eyes of the teacher or in the eyes of the peer group or the eyes of the college. If the student does well, if the student delivers or exceeds expectations, I think you get respect. So how we do at home is not just a matter for us at home. We are the largest country in the world. We are the 5th largest economy, soon will be the 3rd. How we do at home is watched by everybody abroad. What decisions we make at home is also very keenly followed by the world. So if we are now in the coming weeks going to decide our future in whatever way we wish to, it's not just a conversation amongst ourselves. It's a conversation or a discussion in which the other 6 billion people are also tuned in. So these are all actually aspects of why Bharat matters. But I do want to share with you, as someone who travels a fair amount, what is actually our global image today. Because when we say why Bharat matters, at the end of the day, countries matter because there is a perception, there is a branding which has been created. From my own travel experiences, thought of 6 or 7 really key points today. When any of you go abroad or you meet someone from abroad, these are actually their perceptions of India. One, I would say the dominant one is that this was a country which handled the COVID challenge exceptionally well. It started out as the country of the greatest concern. It ended up as the source of the greatest support. And not just handled the COVID, they actually took the right decisions which enabled us today to become the fastest growing large economy of the world. Because do remember, a lot of countries today have still not recovered from the COVID. That their economic performance even today is still shaped very much by the shock and damage that they suffered during COVID. The second is the manner in which we secure our citizens of God. Believe me, that has got everybody's attention in the world. A lot of us, rightly, are very proud of how, I'll give you an example of how we got our students out of Ukraine in Operation Ganga. As I said, rightly so. But I also want you to know that there were many countries who actually told their students and their citizens, saying, sorry guys, there's nothing I can do, you now have to figure out your own way out. And these were not developing countries, they were even developed countries who actually told their people, you are on your own. So this change which has come about, that any Indian traveling anywhere has that sense that, look, sometimes people talk about, there's something called a passport index, and the passport index basically is based on how many places you don't need a visa for. To me, there's something missing in that index. I would have put which passport are you carrying and who will come for you when you are in trouble. And believe me, if you put that factor in, you will get a very different passport index out there. Not getting a visa and having an ability to travel easily is just one part of it. What happens when something goes wrong? Who will look after you? Who has a system which is ready to back you up when you go out? to me, that's the real value of the passport. And if the Indian passport today is looked at with greater respect, as I said, one part of it is what we do at home, but the other is also that people know that this passport means that their government stands behind the person who's carrying the passport. The third is our performance at home. And you know, I often share with my own colleagues in the cabinet and in the parliament that they think that when the foreign minister goes out of India, all the time you discuss foreign policy. Makes sense. But in reality, actually people abroad are enormously fascinated by what we are doing at home in the rest of our lives. You know, they want to know how does your ration system work, how does your election system work, you know, how are you getting your gas cylinder, how are you getting your electricity connection, why is it that it has changed, because they've read all these stories. That when they look, you know, we are speaking about Japan. Let me give you a number related to Japan. In the last 10 years, we have built 40 million houses and given it to people who are eligible in view of their low income. At 4.8 a family, which is the average number in India, that means about 190 million people have got houses in the last 10 years. That's 1.5 times the population of Japan. Now when you tell somebody in Japan, you know, guess what? I'm actually housing 1.5 times your size in the last 10 years. They then actually get the scale of what is happening in this country. Then there is, of course, the infrastructure progress. I think we all live in this country. We can see it every day in different ways. But probably much more fascinating to the world is actually those technology feats that we do. You know, going to I would say in the last 10 years, probably the most impactful thing we have done, other than COVID management, was going to the moon. The Chandrayaan-3 mission, you know, has had a huge impact on the perception of Indians abroad. And finally, as I said, a lot of it is about actually a country which has the ability to stand up for itself, for its interests, for its citizens, stand up to pressure, and in a sense, you know, radiate its own persona and its culture. So let me conclude with this. I'm very confident today that given the focus in the government on the Northeast, given the resources that are there, given the larger stable environment which we have produced, and I accept that there are challenges coming out of Myanmar which are exceptional, but I think we can handle those. Given the fact today that we are globalizing and we are creating a pathway by which our talent and skill at home has access to a global workplace, given the fact that there is enormous interest in the world in investing in India, in knowing in India, traveling in India, I see a lot of possibilities out here. Once again, I'm really very thankful that you have given me an opportunity today of sharing some of my views with you. I think if there's time, you'd like me to respond to something, you know, we can open it up. Can I do it from there? Sure.
Thank you, sir. Okay. So, sir will be taking in 3 questions at once. So, I would like to see hands, and only the selected hands are. Yeah, the girl in the purple sari. Yeah, please go ahead.
You want me to come there? It's easier because turn the mic there. No, just speak. Can I do one thing? I'd like to take maybe 3 questions at a time, then I can take a few rounds.
This has re-emphasized the importance of soft power diplomacy. So this brings in the question, as it belongs to us, how effective are such measures as compared to direct infrastructure investment in India?
Yes. So my question is, sir, we have seen that in northeastern states, whenever there is an entrepreneurial deal setting up in the state, it is seen that revenue and profits flow out from the state. Sir, so in such a situation, what are the ways in which an equitable distribution of profits is shared among the local of states and other concerned stakeholders?
I'll do these 3 and
Yes.
okay. You know, the first question about border policing and connectivity. Look, I think every country has a right to ensure that its borders are protected, that that any migration that takes place is legal and it is regulated. This is the right of a state. This is an obligation of a state. It is a sad truth that we have failed for many years in this. I believe that the last decade has been different. I promise you the next decade will be different. Now, we sometimes, make the error of rationalizing neglect or lack of competence as some kind of virtue. It is not. So I think there's a very clear consciousness today, both in the central government as well as in all the governments of the Northeast, that managing the border, securing the border is very important. Now, securing the border doesn't mean cutting off connectivity. In fact, on the contrary, if there is no connectivity, then people will come through various means. It is only when there is connectivity that you have created a pathway and then you regulate the pathway. So, for me, actually, it's not an either or. Securing the border and creating connectivity are part of a package. Neglecting the border and allowing uncontrolled migration is another package. Each one, as you know, has its, forgive my saying it, a political outlook and a certain history. I believe today that we are in the right outlook and the right history, and therefore and reflected in the right policies. On the soft power issue, yes, look, people, all of us sometimes underestimate how human diplomacy and foreign policy is. That at the end of the day, people connect with each other. There is a chemistry. It's like look, the world is a society, like we are a society. If you get along with somebody, you are more likely to do things for them. It's human. So it applies to nations as well. So I actually believe today, the more we can promote the facets of India, the branding of India, which will appeal to partners abroad, the better are our chances of success. If somebody in Japan, since you mentioned cherry blossom, if somebody in Japan connects intuitively to Meghalaya because of this, and that then biases them in favor of doing things, or if nothing else, coming as tourists and bringing the friends, I'd say so much the better. In fact, that's why I said every part of India has some propensity somewhere. We need to maximize that, and definitely, I believe me, on this I'm a personal authority. I know exactly what appeals to people in Japan. So, and there is a emotional, cultural connect with the Northeast. I think it's something which we should take further. On the enterprises and jobs, look, I have a different view because I think you could pick something like a resource industry and say, well, the benefits of the resources did not come to people of that state. Possible to make that argument. But to me, today, the issue is not so much how do the profits come. The profits will come. That's not the issue. The issue is how do you create employment in that state? How do you create opportunity for people of that region or that state to get a fair share of what is a national growth? If the industries of India, if the new enterprises of India are all outside the northeast, you are automatically putting people in northeast at a disadvantage because you have to go somewhere else. It's not a level playing field for them. So we certainly in the government believe today that there must be a conscious effort today. If something is happening in some other part of India, why doesn't that also happen in the northeast? And that has not been the thinking in the past. As I said, Delhi didn't think Act East. That is what has changed under Modi. I mean, it's a simple thing. In this cabinet, we are finishing our 5 years. There's not a single minister who has not gone to a northeast state. That's how it begins. So that has actually today created a totally different level of commitment there. And again, I would say I take satisfaction that the cutting edge industries, if you look, if someone says, okay, what will India's future be? To me, the future will be semiconductors, it will be electric mobility, it will be space industry, it will be drones, it will be clean tech, it will be renewables. I would like the sunrise industries to be in the northeast as well. And that's really the kind of approach that we are pushing very strongly. I'll take one more.
Trilateral partnerships with India, Japan and Bangladesh can be, so that regional connectivity with the Northeast can be further enhanced.
No, I'll take three. I'll take a set of three.
One round of three questions.
I'm from the state of Sectoral. So my question is something related to the point you just mentioned. The Northeast in the past has had issues with claims of reservation of jobs for the locals. In the globalized world, which you mentioned earlier, wherein FDIs and specialized jobs are an integral part of any partnership, how does one ensure that an equilibrium is created and achieved between bringing specialists from around the countries and outside, and also providing job opportunities for the locals in the employment sector?
Go on. Namaste sir, my name is Bharat. I am also from Assam. So my question is, in recent years, the current government has placed special emphasis on creating new economic sectors. This looks like GIFT City in Gujarat and even special progress in Gurgaon. So do you see such similar cities coming up in the Northeast as well? Because in your speech as well, you did focus on Guwahati getting semiconductor facilities and others.
That's an interesting proposition, an India, Japan, Bangladesh trilateral, because what is actually happening now in the world is, as you all know, the United Nations is not working too well, and the old era when there were camps and alliance groups, that's also kind of no longer the case. So in reality, a cluster of countries who have a similar interest meet up and say, okay, 3, 4 of us, 5 of us, we will work on this issue. So, in different regions, on different subjects, different combinations of countries have come together. We ourselves, for example, with Japan, have a trilateral, one with Australia. We had one with the US, but that's kind of got superseded by the Quad. The passion, you can say today, is towards these kinds of trilateral type arrangements, because these are very practical way of getting something done. It is a fact that the Bangladesh as a country and the current government in Bangladesh has very positive, good relations with Japan. So I think our thinking would be very much in sync with each other. So it's certainly food for thought. If it ever happens, you are welcome to take the credit. On the question you asked, I mean, what you're really asking me in a way is a kind of a fair access, a fair opportunity of employment. How does one create? I feel there are two parallel processes at work. One is my direct responsibility, but one as a citizen, as a minister, as a politician also I am very deeply interested in. The one which is my direct responsibility is really how do I ensure when there is a global demand that our citizens get a fair shot at it. Not just get a fair shot at it, get the the right terms, the protection, the respect which goes with that. You don't want them to go and work at lesser terms than the people of that country. And that's a very big subject today in foreign policy, that we are looking at these mobility agreements with different countries, and the bottom line is allow our citizens to access your markets. Normally they'll put some number, but often the numbers are in real life exceeded because the demand is very great. But ensure that they get the same protection, they get the same benefits and privileges that you would give to your own citizens. And we've in recent times done agreements like this with Japan, with Australia, with Germany, with Italy, Austria, UK, France, and I see this actually growing. The second part of it is within the country. How do you ensure that the youth of the Northeast has a fair shot at national employment opportunities? And there again, I would say one answer to that is actually by investing more deeply in the Northeast ourselves. That the more educational institutions, because that leads to the last question, the more educational institutions which come up there, and the more business investments that there are there, there's then a natural, I would say, ecosystem of capability and creativity which is built up. So my answer to your question, you mentioned some, what is happening in some other states. I think it's something which needs to be thought about. But my gut sense is, whatever we do in Northeast has to be suited to the circumstances of the Northeast. It's not like something works in Gujarat, let us try a replication of that. It may not fit. It may not be the priority. It may not be the step. But definitely, I think what you have seen in the last 10 years, first of all, by improving the infrastructure of the Northeast, by connecting the Northeast, by creating better skilled talent opportunities out there, I would definitely say we need to make a big push for business, because finally, who's a job creator? Business is the job creator. Government is also a creator, but the government is not a primary creator of jobs. It's the business which is the primary creator of jobs. And that is something I would say we would see very much as a priority in the coming years.
Thank you, sir.